We're going to be in Revelation chapter 9 today. Last week we finished up chapter 8. And it's the opening of the seventh seal. And the seventh seal involves 7 trumpets. 7 trumpet judgments. We got through 4 of those in the chapter last week. In chapter number 8, verse 13, I'm going to read that before we get into chapter 9. It says, I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabiters of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound. So what we have here in chapter 8, we had the 7th seal open, and the first 4 of the 7 trumpet judgments contained within the 7th seal. And they were rough. They were rough judgments. There was hail and fire mingled with blood in verse number 7. And it destroyed the trees and the grass and the vegetation. In verse 8, a great mountain, as it were, was cast into the sea. And a third part of the sea became blood. And a third part of the creatures in the ocean died. And a third part of the shipping was destroyed. And in verse number 10, the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven. This star had a name called Wormwood. Brother Jim and I were just kind of discussing this right before class. We still don't know definitively if that Wormwood, it is a capital W, is the name of the star, or if it's an angel or a demon, or what situation that is. It's not clear, but it has significance. The word wormwood is in the Bible many times, and it always has to do with judgment, and so this was a judgment thing. Made the fresh water bitter, and many men died. And then the 4th angel in verse 12 sounds, and a third part of the sun was smitten, a third part of the moon, a third part of the stars. So the day was shortened by a third. And we talked about how this is going to cause not only the obvious problems that come with those first 4 judgments, but there were economic issues that were going to be intensified. Trade and shipping was going to be hampered. Electricity, supply and demand because of the lack of the sun. So we got to understand that although these judgments that we're reading about are horrific on face value, there's a lot more. There's a domino effect that happens with each one of these judgments. And then, of course, in verse 13, another angel flies to the midst, and he sounds this warning. He says, whoa, whoa, whoa. You think these 4 are bad? What's coming is worse. And he says, woe to the inhabiters of the earth. So we're going to start in verse number 9. We're going to read the first 12 verses, because that's as far as we're going to get today. We're going to talk about the first of the 3 woes. Chapter 9, beginning in verse 1, says, And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. And unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. And on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold. and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. And they also had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. One woe is past, and behold, there come 2 more woes. Two woes more hereafter. So this 5th trumpet, probably out of all the judgments and seals that we've seen revealed and opened, this is to the reader, by far the most bizarre. And as you read that, I'm sure you were thinking, this is kind of some science fiction crazy stuff. But truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. And we're told here in chapter number 9 that when the 5th angel sounds his trumpet, a star falls from heaven. Now this isn't a star like the great mountain that fell into the sea. And we're not sure if this star, we're not sure it was like Wormwood, which was a cosmic body. This star is an angelic being. This star has a male persona. Verse 2, it says, he opened the bottomless pit. Verse 1 says, and to him was given the key. This is a personality. This is a being of some sort. Now, this isn't a meteor. Meteors can't have keys. Meteors don't do things. They destroy things. They fall and break into billions of pieces. Yeah, you gotta have keys. But this star falls from heaven. Now, the Bible uses the word star in conjunction with angels in the book of Job. It talks about when the morning stars sang the song of creation, talking about the angelic beings. Later in Revelation, we'll see that there's war in heaven, and the great dragon takes 1/3 of the stars of heaven with him. That's talking about the angelic rebellion. So stars are sometimes referred to as angels. So then we have to think about this angel. Now, we're not clearly identified. We're not given an exact name. We're not given an exact responsibility. We're not given, what this being does. And there's a lot of theories, a lot of ideas out there. As you study the book of Revelation, one thing you're going to learn, if you study more than just what you hear here, and I hope that you are, if you study the pastor's commentaries, if you study any other commentaries out there, there's not a ton of them out there, but there are a few of them out there, is that there is a lot of differing opinions on a lot of the things in the book of Revelation. So I'm not going to present a definitive argument that I'm not going to say that this is this person. I'm going to give you who I believe it is. I'm encouraging you to, speak up as we talk about this. But I want to understand that out of all the theories and ideas of the persona of this angel, this star, I've got 3 of them listed that are the most prevalent ones. And the first one is that some people hypothesize that this star is actually Satan. Now, someone turn to Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 12, and then somebody else find Luke chapter 10 verses 18 for me. And this is some of the scriptures that they use to give credence to their idea that this star is Satan. So as soon as you get Isaiah 14:12, Tony is faster on the draw than I am. So Tony, why don't you read that for us? 14:12 of Isaiah.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which has weakened the nations?
Go ahead and read 13, 14, and 15 also, please.
For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount
obviously, we all should know, I guess, if you've sat in Sunday school at this church for any length of time, you should know, that the devil was an angel. Okay, I hope that's not shocking to any of you. That the devil he was not just an angel, he was a very powerful covering angel, perhaps even an archangel, if you want to call him that. His job was to cover the very throne of God at times. He was the leader, if you will, of the angelic chorus and the choir. He was God's greatest creation. Now, we think of the devil and we kind of find that hard to imagine, but the Bible is very clear that the devil, when he had the name Lucifer in heaven, was special. And his pride, he got sin in his heart. Now, I don't claim to understand why God allows things to happen, why he allowed Lucifer to even develop this pride. But God's ways are not my ways. I just have to accept that God knows what he's doing. But Lucifer, this archangel, this highly favored angel, this angel of prominence and importance and power, we're told here in Isaiah, he developed a problem. He decided that he was going to ascend to the throne of God. He was going to usurp the power of God. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but there are indications in the Bible that Lucifer had command of the earth. And when it talks about ascending to the throne of God, he was talking about taking his kingdom on earth and revolting against the kingdom of heaven and overthrowing God. And of course, he tried that, and he convinced a third of the angelic host that he could do it. And of course, he couldn't. Because the creation is never stronger than the Creator. And God cast him down, and his form and his visage changed, and sin consumed him. And in Isaiah that we just read, it's an account of him falling from heaven. So a lot of people, when they see this star falling from heaven, they assume that is Lucifer. Now, who had Luke chapter 10, verse 18? Go ahead, Sherry.
And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven.
And he said unto him, I beheld Satan as lightning falling from heaven. Now, these are two of the verses that these folks use to contend that this angel, in verse number 1 of chapter 9, is Satan. And I must say that they have some sound footing here. This could be Satan. Look what he does. He opens the bottomless pit. The keys of hell, death and hell were given to him. The bottomless pit, that which is hell. We're going to go into that in just a minute, but we're talking about hell here. The keys of the pit are open, and he opens the bottomless pit, and he unleashes hell on earth. That sounds like something Satan would definitely be foredoing. Now, some people also believe that this person is the Antichrist. Now, I have a little harder time with this concept because the Antichrist, I believe, Scripture is going to say that the person of the Antichrist is on earth. Okay? So how is he falling from heaven to earth? Now, they say that this is the spirit of Judas Iscariot falling down on earth, and at this time the Antichrist will become the spirit of Judas Iscariot, incarnate, and will. But I don't believe Judas Iscariot will be falling from heaven either. I believe Judas Iscariot is in the pit. So that, to me, this theory doesn't hold very much water. But it is a prevalent theory that this is Antichrist. This is a reference to the Antichrist's supernatural ability to command the armies of darkness. Now, he will have supernatural ability. The Antichrist will be a very powerful being. He'll be a great deceiver. With him and the false prophet, we're going to see in a few chapters here, the whole world is going to be deceived. Go ahead, Brother Jim.
Yeah, but he couldn't do that unless he got permission from the Lord, because the Lord said, I, in Revelation
Exactly.
Both death and hell.
Right. Their answer to that, Brother Jim, is that the keys were given to this person. So I don't subscribe to this being the Antichrist, but there are a lot of those out there that do. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, that's where you got the keys, right?
Well, whoever this is got the keys from Jesus.
Yeah, but Jesus went and got them when he died on the cross.
Yes. When Jesus.
From who?
Well, from the I don't know who, I don't know where they were. They might have been hanging on the outside, you know. And Mayberry, they were hanging right outside the thing, you know. Otis would reach through and grab them and open and go get into the bathroom.
Before that, my question.
That's a very good question. I don't know if death holds the keys. Death is a persona in the Bible. Maybe death had the keys to hell. And maybe when Jesus overcame death, the indication is that he said, hey, okay, the keys are mine.
Could have been the death angel.
Could be the death angel.
In charge of all that area before Jesus went captive.
Absolutely. See, this is the great thing about the Bible. You know, never in my life, Mike, have I asked the question to myself, who did Jesus take those keys from? Go ahead, Tony, then Roger.
Could have got them from the Father. He turned everything over to the Lord after he came back to heaven.
Absolutely, he could have got them from the Father. But he had to have them to take the captives out of the captivity, though, so they had to be someplace below him.
Did he go to the Father first before he went back?
No, he descended into hell. Upon his death, he went to hell before he ever ascended. Roger?
So the first sin that we know of happened in heaven?
Absolutely, right. Well, if Lucifer was king of this world, it would have actually happened on earth. But he's an angelic being, so the first sin concept happened, it wasn't a man. Adam and Eve, the first sinners that are human, but they were deceived by the chief of sinners, if you will. Brother Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, the fact that Satan or Lucifer, he developed pride. Pride to threw him out of heaven.
Right.
And God says this won't happen. You can't have this. You're gone.
Right.
And that's what happened. Pride was the factor that took him down.
Lucifer developed an eye problem. I will ascend to heaven. I will be as the Most High. I will sit upon the throne of God. You know what? That eye problem, that pride, really is one of the underlying causes of every sin we commit. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, wouldn't that coincide with Satan's wrath, knowing his time is short? If he was expelled from heaven, then he would know his time is short because the prophecies were coming true. And would that also be the time when he no longer can accuse the brethren?
Well,
he rages against the saints that are in heaven.
Well, I think if this is Satan cast down, I think that coincides very well with what's showing. His time was short, and he's no longer railing against the saints in heaven, but he's railing against the saints, the sealed ones of God on earth, and he's making their life miserable.
But he also rages against the
Yes, absolutely. He's the accuser of the brethren, but this time would be separated. He would be separated out of that if he was cast out. But so that's two of the three. You got the hypothesis this character is Satan. Go ahead, Fish. Gail's giving you up.
I asked her, in regards to Lucifer's pride, wouldn't that have to have been on earth because there is no sin in heaven?
You're right. Well, I guess you're right. There's no sin in heaven now.
Right.
But this is one of those questions I don't really know how to explain. I'm just going to kind of give you my thought. You take it or leave it. Heaven, as we think of the concept of heaven now, I think is different than the heaven that was created first. Because Jesus, when he ascended to heaven, he said, I go prepare a place for you. Okay? And there's different levels of heaven. There's the first heaven, the second heaven, the third heaven. And the first heaven, of course, is the stratosphere that we call our sky. And if Lucifer was king of the earth, he was king of this heaven. And therefore sin could have happened to heaven. There'll be no sin in the heaven we go to. There'll be no thought of that. God's presence can't accommodate sin. So obviously the sin didn't occur in the third heaven. Or if it did, that's the reason he was immediately cast down. But it's a really good question. But Lucifer was the first sinner. The first created being to have sin in their heart. And it started with pride. Go ahead, Gil.
I think you're right because, Satan kept saying he wanted to be higher than God.
Right.
Over God, so he was probably
Genesis. And we talked about the original heaven, the original earth. We talked about that period of time between verse 1 and verse 2. Something happened there. Because when God created something, God creates it complete. He creates it perfect. And then in verse 2 in Genesis, the word void is used. And there was something barren, something wasted. So there was a judgment. And that was probably the fall of Satan and the first judgment upon the earth. And if you need to go back and revisit that, it's probably on the computer in the archives. We've studied Genesis chapter 1. But this sin was the reason Lucifer became Satan. And it was based on pride. And like I said before, pride, it really causes us a lot of problems. Go ahead, Brother Jim.
Something else you might want to think about discussing this is that it says, how art thou fallen from heaven, in regards to Lucifer. Now, he had access to the very presence of God.
But he had access to the throne of God after his fall, because when in the book of Job, when the sons of God came before the throne, he came with them and accused Job. So we got to realize Satan, we can't confine Satan to the little red guy with a pitchfork that we see on the cartoons. Besides God, there is nothing in this world more powerful than Satan. And if it wasn't for God, Satan would have succeeded. Absolutely. Go ahead, Brother Steve.
Yeah, I think I just got my question answered. I thought when Satan was cast out that he couldn't go back.
Right.
But evidently,
Yeah, he has the ability. He stands before the throne of God right now accusing you in front of God. He accused Job. Satan is, I think one of the things we do as human beings that is frightening is we underestimate our enemy. We compared to Satan, if we didn't have the power of Christ Jesus indwelling in us, he'd spit us up and chew us up and spit us out. And in the lives of Christians, he has destroyed because they underestimated, or they thought they could do it on their own. And anytime you separate yourself from the power of Christ in your life, you're making yourself vulnerable. You're setting yourself up for a fall. Brother Bill.
Yeah, you just spoke to my point. Because we underestimate Satan's power, we overestimate our ability to compensate. So that we don't necessarily, I don't necessarily check my battle armor every day. Do I have on the whole armor of God? Not just sitting here on Sunday, but every day as I get out of bed, as I step out the door, as I check my first thought of the day. Really, my first thought of the day is my armor secure? Because the adversary is there in my thoughts, in my actions, and in everybody else's thoughts and actions.
It's important. It's a daily struggle. And it's a struggle. I'll tell you what, I know you may not believe this, but, Pastor Raines and myself, and Brother Jim, and we don't wake up every day and put a suit and tie. But we better wake up every day and put our armor on. Because that armor is a lot more important than a suit and tie. But Roger.
Is this where those events are getting down to? If that is Lucifer, is that for 1,000 years at this time?
Not this time. This is a different occurrence. That's in chapter 20, and we're going to reference that in just a minute. But Satan is possibly the identity of this star. There's those who believe that Antichrist is identity. There are those who believe it's just a powerful angel, which very well could be. There's not a definitive description given. Some people believe that this is Jesus Christ. And they've got a couple verses they use. Revelation chapter 1, verses 18. You guys want to turn there real quick? Brother Jim referenced this. This was Jesus speaking to John right at the beginning of the Revelation. Verse number 17 says, when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead, and he laid his right hand upon me, saying unto me, fear not, I am the first and the last. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive evermore, amen, and have the keys of hell and of death. That is Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ has the keys to death and hell. This angel in chapter 9, verse 1, is given the keys to the bottomless pit, which once again I'm going to go into in just a minute, but this is hell we're talking about. And then chapter number 20, this is what Roger was talking about. They coincide this verse with the chapter 9 verse because they believe that this is Jesus. It says, I saw an angel come down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. You say, Pastor Tim, how does that identify that person as Jesus? The theory is that Jesus Christ is the only persona, that could chain up the devil. There's only one stronger than the devil, and that's Jesus. Go ahead, Pastor.
A couple of thoughts here. This verse has never been properly exegeted by anyone.
Right.
And there are some things we will never know because God hasn't told us specifically. There are other things we need to study thoroughly. Obviously, I've written a commentary on the whole book of Genesis, but one of the problems with writing commentaries early in your life, when you get an old man like me, you sometimes learn better. But I don't think I've learned any better. I think if you look, I'm inclined to believe that this is either the Lord or a holy angel. And the reason I'm inclined to believe that is because God is bringing judgment on the world. This is the tribulation time. He's sending judgment. He is unleashing judgment. When you read the following passages, look what this thing does. That when they come out of hell, look what this happens to these people. So, and he opens up hell. We know the Lord did have the key. And smoke came up as it was a furnace. And then all these demoniac locusts came. And they were given, power. And in verse number 4, it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass, nor anything, nor any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. You can think a lot of things. I don't really think the devil would be interested in wiping out his army. So the fact that this might be the devil really, when you get into all of the exegeting the passages, it's unlikely. It's more likely that it's a reference to the Lord. And somebody said, I saw him fall from heaven. If you're standing on earth, how many of us have seen falling stars or shooting stars? The Bible tells us that stars are angels. From earth's perspective, if I see a holy angel, hey, he's got he's moving this way. He's coming this way. So I might say, well, he's falling. But he's not falling. He's got the power on man. He's zooming toward this place. He's coming toward this place. But, that's just kind of my perspective on the thing, that it is either the Lord or a holy angel that is given the power to open that up so this world can pay for all of its crimes, reject the activities.
Well, I tend to agree with the pastor because, first of all, just knowing the persona of the devil the way I do, I wouldn't trust him with the keys to hell. And I'm pretty sure God wouldn't trust Satan with the keys to hell. And as Pastor said, this army of locusts we're getting ready to talk to that comes out of hell, they don't harm the servants of God. They're harming the inhabiters of the earth, which is a distinctive difference. That's right. If it was a devil, they'd be after. But I'm not going to say definitively that that's who this is, because I think that's way over my pay grade. But I'm going to say that that's the theory I lean toward, that this is Jesus Christ. And sometimes Jesus has taken the appearance of man. There was pre-incarnate appearances of Christ before Bethlehem. He appeared as a man. He appeared as the captain of the army of the Lord's host to Joshua. He appeared as Melchizedek to Abraham. Of course, he took the form of man when he became a baby in Bethlehem. And he can take the form of however he wants. And I'm telling you, Jesus, I'm going to agree with the commentators that say he's the only one that can grab that rascal devil and chain him up in chapter 20. I think this is who this is talking about. And he has the keys, which we know from chapter 1 of Revelation that is Jesus. And he opens the bottom of the pit. And there arose smoke out of the pit. Now we're going to get a little bit of this, and this is about as far as we're going to get today. We need to have another study on Satan, I think, because that was pretty intense, a lot of interest there. But this bottomless pit is hell. Okay, this isn't a separate thing. This is hell, and we know that because of the smoke that rises from the pit. Now, hell is in the center of the earth. Okay, this is not the lake of fire. The lake of fire is something that is out in the universe. It comes at a later time. Hell is in the center of the earth that you're standing on. Now, anybody that's taken science up to 4th grade knows that the center of the earth is a molten mess of fire and brimstone and goo. So it's well within reason to believe that the hell that is described in the Bible, that burns forever and ever and ever, is located there. Jesus died and was buried. Then he gave a sign. The Jews were asked for a sign. He said, "No other sign will I give you this but the sign of Jonah. As Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights, so shall the Son of Man be in the belly of the earth." You know, we talk about Jesus dying on the cross. We all accept that. A lot of people don't understand that wasn't the full penalty. The full penalty had to be paid. Jesus Christ went to hell for our sin. He spent 3 days in the belly of the earth. And he rose and he had those keys. Now, without getting too in-depth into this, hell, prior to the resurrection, there were 2 separate chambers in the middle of the earth. One was hell and one was paradise, or Abraham's bosom. In the book of Luke, the story of the rich man and Lazarus, they both died. The rich man opened his eyes being tormented in hell. And he looked across and he saw Lazarus lying in Abraham's bosom. Prior to the resurrection of Christ, Old Testament saints, any God-fearing, God-believing, God-following saint of the Old Testament, when they died, they went to paradise. And there was a great gulf fixed between hell, Hades, and paradise. And you couldn't go back and forth. Remember, when the rich man, he cries out to Abraham, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Send Lazarus to dip his fingers in water and cool my tongue." Abraham said, "Well, we can't do that. And even if we could, there's this great gulf fixed between us so that we can't go over there and you can't come over there." So when Jesus rose from the dead with the keys of death and hell, he set captivity free. The saints of the Old Testament ascended into heaven, and that left this chamber. And when Jesus rose from the dead, that great gulf vanished and hell began to expand. It enlarges itself daily. And hell now consumes the entire center of the earth. And it's a center. The earth is a sphere. Hell is a sphere. A sphere has no beginning and no end. It's bottomless. Okay? So this bottomless pit is hell. Now, according to Revelation chapter 9 here, if we're going to take this literally, and I do, there is some place, there's some access point to this bottomless pit. Now, I don't know where this is. Could be Chicago. I don't know. But there's an access point to hell. Someday, this gate or these bars or whatever, the Bible talks about the earth having bars, is going to be open. And there's going to be smoke. It says smoke of a great furnace come out of this pit. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. Now in chapter 8, a third of the sun is blotted out. So you already are a third less sunlight, a third less daylight. And now, to make matters worse, there is a smoke permeating from this bottomless pit that has been opened up. And it darkens and chokes the sun, chokes the sky. If you've ever been to Los Angeles and you've experienced smog, you know how it chokes. I went to China, in Beijing. Beijing had this horrible smog. You know, it's no wonder you see them walking around with medical masks all the time over there. You can taste it. You can taste the air when you breathe it. Anyone that's ever been around a volcano, was it 2 years ago? The volcano blew, what was it, in Finland or whatever? They shut down all the airlines and had a cloud over all of Europe for a few days. This is going to be like that. There's going to be smoke and ash just coming up from that pit. And the sun's going to be black. It's going to be darkened. And it's going to be a noxious fume. And it's going to choke and burn. But folks, that's not even the worst of it. But we don't have time to get into that. Take your lesson, fold it up, put it in chapter number 9 next week so you don't lose it. Because I'm telling you, I told you Revelation has some crazy stuff in it. You're about to see some of the craziest. And like Brother Jim just said, it may be crazy and it may be mind-boggling, but it's all true. And we have to keep that in our hearts and remember that.